Well, speaking of not attending, I won't be here in May. I'll be in Scotland.
Oh, nice.
All these European trips.
Yeah.
All right,
So many-
are you
Are
ready?
we ready to go?
All right, go ahead.
All right, this is the Beach Preservation Committee, April 2nd. Citizens were advised, consistent with the Freedom of Information Act, and we have no citizens today, correct?
Correct.
What happened?
If you
We were
all
so
don't mind, just
popular
move the mics a little bit closer to your mouth so
Last meeting was enough.
we pick those up.
Exactly. They know better now.
Hopefully I have a voice to get us through the agenda today. Okay, so the first thing on the agenda is approval of minutes. I have some comments, but does anybody have any comments on the March 5th or March 23rd minutes?
No.
Okay,
I made mine already and they were incorporated.
okay. I sent mine last night to you, Douglas. March 23rd, under Section A, when we're talking about the definition of a minimum healthy beach, second paragraph, I wanted to have it in there, noted that the recent accretion noted on the south end comes from placement of Army Corps beneficial use project rather than a natural accretion. And then second to last paragraph, under that same section, it starts with, Mr. Trainum shared data showing, I believe it says 2 million, it should be 2.8 million cubic yard deficit of sand island wide if there were 200 feet of dry sand beach seaward of the existing dune line. And then I have new text to go behind that. This case was dismissed. While not ideal for beachgoers to place chairs by bushes, the area is currently accretional, may likely continue to grow bushes, and has great protective distance from baseline to ocean. A middle case, which was previously requested by committee members, showed an island-wide deficit of 750,000 cubic yards if there were 200 feet of beach seaward of the South Carolina baseline, with adjustments for homes and wild dunes that are seaward of the baseline. So that's basically saying that when Stephen talked through these cases with us last time, this first case was the, 2.745 thousand cubic yards, and we said that would be ideal, but that's a ton of money, and we're not gonna spend money on places that have 400 feet from the baseline to the ocean. So the middle case is the one that I added that was missing from the conversation, which is that South Carolina baseline case, which showed the 750,000 deficit. Does that make sense to everybody?
It does.
Okay. So you have that in writing, so you don't have to
Nicole, you have that? Yep.
struggle with that. Okay, with that, do we need to formally approve the,
Someone has to make a motion and then second, and then you approve them as amended.
okay, thank you.
I make the motion to approve those minutes.
As amended,
Yeah. Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, approved as amended. New business, the first thing we're going to talk about is the discussion of issues for our committee for 2026. Dietmar sent out, and it's in our packet, the list of items. Do you want to go through every one of them? I only had one minor change. The first is defining a healthy beach for Isla Palms, recommending that the city council adopt a revised definition, impacting the planned summer-fall 2026 nourishment project with the revised definition. I would add to that our beach monitoring reports would then need to be aligned around that new definition.
Right.
Agree.
Okay. Number two, understanding the bidder response for the 2026 nourishment project and recommending a path forward to city council. It's on our agenda for today. Reviewing the ongoing nourishment project monthly, conducting frequent field trips, meet with CAC on project progress, recommending project adjustments as appear necessary. Any comments? Jump in, guys.
Yeah.
Discussing the Foth Olson study on beach management alternatives, interacting with the company during their analysis. We've already had one meeting with them. Our next meeting would be next month, I believe, on that.
Yeah, okay.
Identifying and consulting with additional experts in erosion control structures on the eastern seaboard. For example, Stephen Leatherman at FIU, Orrin Pilkey at Duke, Taylor Engineering in Jacksonville, and South Carolina DES.
Are those all names of companies that are,
Those are companies that I researched, the
Oh.
professors that are experts in this area. One of them is anti, and one of them is for pro beach hot structures on the beach. And then this Taylor Engineering firm is the largest on the East Coast that knows a thing or two about hot structures as well.
great?
Okay.
Okay,
Okay, like it?
yeah.
Recommending to council the best way forward regarding erosion control with hard structures. That'll be an output of the
Number
Foth
5.
alternatives
Yeah.
analysis.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
it's
think
good
we
to
were
get.
already in agreement with that one. Building consensus among the council, the Wild Dunes Community Association and DES, various environmental groups, and the citizens of Isle of Palms around the committee's recommendations of hard structures.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
It just goes one step further, right? I just didn't want us to only recommend to city council, but then help build consensus around what we feel is the right thing to do.
That's a good idea.
I think it's
Yeah.
going to be critical because I
Yeah.
think it can be emotional for people, so
Right.
we need to listen and understand and work together.
Oh,
on it.
absolutely, absolutely, yeah.
Number 8, identifying, discussing, and recommending further measures that council should consider to establish and maintain a healthy dune system, i.e. fences and vegetation.
Yeah. Maintenance.
Right.
Maintenance.
Yep.
Maintenance.
We
is
like
good.
it.
Yep, yep.
Identifying, discussing, and recommending annual maintenance activities that the city should entertain to maintain beaches. One of the points that was on from the ad hoc committees, prior committee, is to review triggers and emergency management recommendations, and this seems to fit hand in hand with that comment.
Yeah. I
Okay,
think
so
that-
different
Agreed.
from number 8.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's very important.
yeah.
Do you want to call out specifically that we want to review triggers
I
and
think so.
emergency
Yeah.
management recommendations?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
make
think
it
so.
Easier to
Okay.
understand.
Because
So
I
that-
didn't read that and think of triggers.
Okay,
Yeah.
so far we have 2 ads. Number 10, studying, understanding, and recommending to council prudent ways to finance future beach nourishment efforts.
Okay, yeah.
Yep. Identifying, exploring, and recommending local, state, and federal funds that the city, no pun intended,
Then bleep that out.
reverse, the city should be considering to access.
Sure.
Amen to that one. Identifying, exploring, and recommending partnerships that the city should be considering relative to beach renourishment. For example, U.S. Army Corps, City of Mount Pleasant, et cetera.
Right.
Okay. It's a lot.
Did we miss anything?
I was going to say, it sounds a lot, but comprehensive
Okay.
to me.
Okay, so we had 2 additions to it, align monitoring reports around the definition of a healthy beach, and then reviewing triggers and emergency management recommendations to number 9. Okay? Is that something we have to formally approve?
You can, I think.
Why not?
Yep.
Why not? Do we have a motion to formally approve this with the 2 additions discussed?
I'll make a motion to approve these
I second.
items.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. All right, passed. Moving along. Okay. So next we have discussion and consideration of recommending a minimum healthy beach profile. We have a definition that went out for the minimum healthy beach profile, but John wisely thought that it would be helpful to preface it with, why we want to make the change. So John's got handouts that he gave to everybody.
Yeah. So just to explain my thinking here, I was put myself in the place of the city council member, and I'm getting this recommendation on my desk, and I might not know what the change is. You know, what was before and what's different, and then why do we need to make this change? You know, and see, not all the city council members, I think, are going down to the beach and spending time there. Some work on firefighter compensation. There's all sorts of issues, and they might not be as connected to what we're doing as obviously as we are. And then, okay, so we need to make a change, and then what are the expected benefits of making this change? So I think what it was trying to do is put this thing into perspective. So then when they're asked to, to look at this definition of a healthy beach, they'll have a better idea of what they're being asked to do and why they should do it.
All right. You want to
Okay.
go for it, John, or you want me to?
Why don't you?
Oh, the girl with no voice.
I'll do it. I can do it. Let me do it. Here. All right, Mindy. You
It was very well written, John.
guilted me into it. All right. Okay, so,
Work like a charm.
You're the author.
well, actually, Wendy, I took something that,
AI helped us. too.
okay, Wendy and
Jousted
ChatGPT
into AI.
did. So I started, it's called Background, and we started with the current method, which is the protection of structures. I think that's how we've defined, there's certain barrier protecting the existing structures on the beach. And also, we've been slow to address, we haven't been on top of implementing new replenishment projects. There's been delays in the slow reaction to addressing these issues. And so then I put down here, the cost of it is, we've lost, excuse me, I haven't really prepared for this. We're focused on saving structures now, not the beach itself. I think that's the big point here. And then because we haven't been reacting quickly, we haven't even been successful in protecting all of the structures. We've had obvious issues. So I put in a couple of pictures. I think these photos are good because I imagine this might go on the website, and I'd like the public to see this because there's a lot of people in the Isle of Palms who are residents that don't walk on the beach. I mean, and I just think it's important that we visually give them a visual of what's going on.
Yeah.
And
We've
then-
lost swimming pools, we've lost decks to the tides. There's been damage of homes that has occurred on Beechwood East. And a huge concern is the sandbags and debris and lack of healthy beach for tourists.
Right, and then so on part two, we talk about the impact on tourism and recreation. And in many areas of our beach, there's no beach at high tide, so tourists can't place down their towels or walk. And there are studies that show a significant impact on tourism revenue by, like Miami had something, I thought it was kind of ridiculous, but for every dollar they spend on nourishment, they get $1,000 in tourist revenue. So I take that with a grain of salt, but there are, there have been studies that link spending money on protecting the beach and increasing tourism revenue. And then, of course, we have lost jobs, and then our $6.5 billion of residential property will be impacted, and then not just the beachfront houses. Every house on Isle of Palms is affected by not having a healthy beach. So, and then, of course, the tourists who come, I have a picture here at 53rd Avenue. So here's a bunch of umbrellas set up for, I assume, tourists. And do you think they're going to come back next year and stay at that house? I don't know. I wouldn't. So, and then, okay, so what's the proposal? And we call it a proactive beach width management strategy. So we would define the healthy beach as the objectives that shift focus to maintaining the entire beach system as a natural buffer. And I specifically 200 feet of dry sand, and from the beach line to the mean high tide line. I also inserted here that Hilton Head Island uses this target. This isn't something that we just came up with out of the blue. So it's this new method will protect the beach, the dunes, and the homes behind them, because the homes are going to benefit by having a dry sand beach in front of them. And then, of course, for tourism, it'll be beneficial for tourists and for Island Pond IOP residents who don't have a beachfront house. You know, we like to come to the beach too. Oh, and then the other thing is there's the monitoring reports. If we decide that we want to define it as a healthy beach, we could take overhead views of the beaches with lines that delineate the dry sand line target and then the actual line, and we could easily visualize where the beach is improving or retreating. The current reporting, no offense, but it consists of cubic yard per foot volume with graphs of underwater beach profiles, and that is really, really hard for me and I think others to understand. It doesn't give us a picture of what's going on. So I think that, and then I think the other thing was, which I forgot to put in, but we'll save money in the long run by doing, our renourishment projects should last longer and not have to be compressed if we do it right the first time. And so anyway, that's what I did.
So I would just like, for context, I think, just a question that I have is, and I think the prior term was minimum healthy beach profile. It was developed by the ad hoc committee group, and it specifically was the lowest that the city was willing to tolerate, the smallest beach we could ever have, and then that was the line that we worked backwards from to get to where renourishment projects should fill out to.
That was the trigger line.
That was the trigger line. So it was all related to triggers. Is that still, I mean, are we planning to take this new definition, and because I think it's now, I think this document just calls it the healthy beach definition. Is it the minimum healthy beach, or is this something like an aspirational thing that we would like to have, or is it tied specifically to the triggers that say, you know, when it gets down to 199 feet from the, and there's a little bit of confusion about beach line, and I think that's the BCM line and/or a structural line, whichever is seaward. Are we saying anytime it gets less than 200 feet from OCRM line, we should be starting a renourishment project?
So I think we haven't talked about triggers yet, which is in our to-do list. So this is a minimum healthy beach. So if you have 200 feet from 100 Ocean all the way up to like 54th, the South Carolina baseline works for the island. When you get into some areas in Wild Dunes, you've got homes on the wrong side of that baseline. So there we would switch to from a structure, meaning a house or a pool. And we can discuss if it should be a structure plus 20 feet or the structure house pool. But you kind of switch there where you've got problems with that line. So for most of the for most of Isle of Palms, that South Carolina baseline works fine. So you would say, I want 200 feet of healthy beach, which we have in a whole bunch of places on Isle of Palms, and we have some deficits, obviously, on the ends. And so you say, I always want that there, and then I want to do the renourishment. So Stephen's calculated what the erosion is on, for Wild Dunes, and, you know, we can talk about the erosion on the south end, and you would add that. So you add that to your renourishment, and at the end of the renourishment, in a perfect world, if you have the calculations perfectly, at the end of 8 years, you would end up with 200 feet of dry sand beach. You're going to be wrong, because nobody's ever perfect, right? So you're going to see it come maybe, you know, landward of that, or maybe you don't lose as much. But what would be your trigger to say, I'm on this every 8-year project? When do I have to shift and say, what would I do?
And this is how Hilton Head does it?
That's how Hilton Head does it.
Well, the trigger right now is clear, is not, it's too late. By the time we get to the trigger, we're way past where we should have started. So I think we're trying to get to a place where we're more protected to begin with. So we never get to that trigger.
So
So we
if
never
you don't
get to
mind.
that trigger. So that's what I see.
So I guess I would say the process when the minimum healthy beach profile was created, it was very much, it was the end result of what is the cost, what is the, what's the appropriate cadence? It used to be 10 years, it went to 8 years. So it was very much the end result of a lot of analysis, a lot of thought in terms of cost, methodology. It almost seems like this group is advocating to do it the other way around without, because I don't know that we know.
The
the-
co-
There's two
the-
differences.
Well, the cost is something that I'll talk about it now. We don't spend enough money to maintain our beaches. And we have, I'll be called Mr. $6.5 billion. That's how much the value of the residential property is in Isle of Palms. And I fail to understand that we cannot, some saying that we can't afford to do this. That is not true. And the city, I don't know if it's the city council or the committee, but we have the wealth in this community to make our beaches as good as they should be. And I don't like to hear that we can't afford it, because we can.
Well, I get, maybe the appropriate statement would be that we cannot afford it with our current
Right.
revenue structures.
We have to,
So
maybe we
would-
make some changes,
We would
yeah.
have to find new streams of revenue.
Right,
And that was, council specifically asked this group
okay.
to focus on that question. Because it's not,
Okay, that's
it's not
fair.
an easy, it's not an
Okay.
easy thing to, there's kind of generally a conclusion that other people should pay.
Right.
The state should pay, the county should pay, the Fed should pay.
Right.
Yeah,
But when you start kind of pushing down those paths, it's very, very challenging. And
Right.
council has found that, the Beach Advocates Group has found that. So they're not easy spigots of money to just turn on.
right,
So if those pan out, or if those don't pan out, then it has the residents paying.
right.
Kind of here, most
Yeah.
recently, we had with just getting to, and I say just, but I think it'll be a fantastic project, but getting to a base bid amount had the city council considering a significant, basically the most, the biggest tax increase that they can legally do, still had a shortage.
But a tax increase on what the businesses, right?
Well,
No, property tax.
property taxes.
tax.
We're
Okay.
limited by the state how much property tax we can increase in any
Oh,
given
each year?
time.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah?
so it's
Okay,
not like
okay.
we need more money, let's just raise taxes.
Okay.
It's limited by state law.
So
All
when,
right,
so when
we'll
you
get on it
turn,
then.
when you
Okay.
turn all of the spigots fully on,
Uh-huh.
we still had a massive funding gap in the next project, 8 years from
Okay.
now. We were gonna get through, and it had this ripple effect through our fund balances that nobody could get comfortable with. And it was a little bit of an unsolvable thing. We're limited in how much we can raise taxes, we're limited in how much we can charge NA taxes. The state, the county, the feds are not lining up to help us.
Right.
So I would hate for you all to put something out there that you say this would be fantastic, but you then do the analysis and there's no realistic way to achieve it. If that's the first thing kind of launched by this group, I wonder if it is going to be
Right.
useful.
So
Okay, I
I would
understand.
say, we know we have to look at finances. We also know we have to look at maybe ways to preserve the sand with structures, because pouring tons of money that immediately washes away doesn't make sense, I don't think, economically. But two comments about what's different. The first is that when there was a discussion of Healthy Beach by the ad hoc committee, I've talked to Cindy, I've talked to Dan, I've talked to Scott Pierce. There was never an understanding that when, you take a look at a healthy beach, that you then apply it and say, I'm going to count property behind the dunes as part of that, so that tourists can access it. That no one was ever aware of that, and I don't know if they ever bought into that. So what we're proposing is that you switch that so that the healthy beach is defined for the most part at the baseline, which on the south end mimics the dunes. I know we've been accretional in reaches 3 and 4, so you've got tons of property outside of that. And in Wild Dunes, you've got problems. But for the most part, that's the change, is that you're not counting property that tourists can't access. Because ultimately, this is about, we're not just protecting homes, we're trying to protect the economic engine of the island for residents and tourists to come to the beach. So that's one shift. The second is, so if you look at 9th Avenue, it's like maybe this poster child. They currently had like 150 feet of beach from the baseline to the wetline. We're recommending 200 instead of 150. So we can argue, does this make sense or not? But we're trying to be proactive so that we don't end up with pools falling into the ocean, private property lost, tourists not having anywhere to sit on the beach. We're trying to get out of that reactive mode. So if you want to place an extra $2 million of sand out there, that would get you to the definition of what we're talking about. So I don't know if that breaks the bank for
Yeah.
$2 million. And you can argue incrementally, well, maybe it shouldn't be 200, it should be 150. Okay, so you can back off maybe $500,000. But I don't think having beach included that is not accessible to residents and tourists makes sense.
Yeah.
So
And
I don't
then
think we're going to
what-
budge on that piece.
And then
of it.
let's find out, let's do the plan with this in mind and find out how far the dollars will take us, okay? And at
Well,
least we'll
plus,
know, we'll have
Wendy
50
made the point, if I may, Douglas, this whole entire calculation by the city going out into the next project 8 or 10 years from now fails to acknowledge that when we are implementing hard structures, we would expect that the deterioration of the beaches significantly slows. Right? I think these hard structures will pay for themselves in less than 2 years. I think, and I'm an engineer, so I'm talking with a little bit of knowledge, that these structures probably will prevent half of the erosion. So a $30 million project becomes a $15 million project and becomes much more affordable for the city. So I think we are at a turning point where the city is getting ready to accept that hard structures may be the solution here.
Yeah. Agree.
Yeah, and I guess I would say that is another absolute task that council wanted this group to get into, dig into. It's complicated. There's a cost-benefit analysis that needs to be done. And I think all of those are things to be worked through. And I guess I'm questioning the focus on, and I guess I'm going to start just saying the minimum healthy beach profile today. From going back to the origin of that term, it was to establish triggers for the next renourishment. I think that we're all kind of agreeing that probably is happening somewhere 8 years from now. I think that's kind of our best guess. And I'm wondering why this group is hyper-focused on it now without all of this information that we're talking about needing and getting because it's complex. Why is it that you all are
For
wanting?
two
to do
reasons,
this?
Douglas. Reason number one is the city's engaging into one of the largest renourishment projects ever undertaken, and we want to make sure that this project is serving the people of Isle of Palms in the way that we think they should be served with healthy beaches. So that's why we sprinted out of the gate to get a new definition in place that will influence to some extent the project that is coming upon us. The second is we want to start with the definition of what the outcome of all of this should be so that our future work can be directed towards how do we going to get this accomplished.
And I thought I heard Father Olson and maybe Stephen, sorry if I'm putting words in your mouth, that this wasn't a big deal to make, this wasn't a huge change. Because they've got all the profile information and the cubic yards thing that's happening under the water. But if they can just turn the focus onto the beach, the top of the beach, that's visible and usable by the town, by, people. I don't think it is a big switch, and I thought I heard them both
Well-
say that.
And I think there are nuances to what you're saying. I think, Wendy, you have suggested that maybe the minimum healthy beach profile doesn't apply to triggers if the area is accretional over some period. Is that kind of what we're thinking, that you
Go
would
through the
not?
document. The document says that you define your 200 feet as your minimum healthy beach. You would do a renourishment or start to look at considering a nourishment if you're currently at a deficit or you forecast a deficit. So like right now in Grand Pavilion, they have over that right now. But if you take a look at the forecast, we would forecast that that would be eroding. So then you would therefore renourish that piece of it. And you would also have a trigger that says is that it has to be eroding in order for you to want to consider doing a renourishment. So if for some reason, you expect the forecast to be that you're going to be accretional in 3 and 4 reach or whatever, you're not going to be doing a renourishment there. So this is focused on the ends where you have erosion. We kind of threw in, let's only put a trigger if you're going to lose 5 feet. So you visually see that the wet line comes in 5 feet per year. You could say that could be like the minimum trigger. We didn't really have the data to quantify 5 feet, so we just said it has to be erosional. That definition of a healthy beach with the visual of where that wet line is has to be eroding over time in order for you to want to renourish.
And I think now is the time to make a change, as Dietmar said, because look how, you're saying we should just do it the way we've always been doing it, and that's unacceptable.
So-
We're in a crisis situation here based on our past practices. So we need to make some changes and be flexible about it.
So, and I guess this is a question. I think, John, you're saying that, and the example is good in the packet, that we are at a crisis situation at 53rd? This photo
And not
is,
just 53rd, it's like.
but
other
that's a good
South-
example of where
Well-
this
Yeah, and
group,
they're not going to put sand there. Like, they think that's
Well, we
fine.
talked about
Yeah.
this. I mean, I know this is your passionate piece of it, but we talked about, that was that first case that Stephen presented called the management line in our last meeting, correct? Where you kind of take a look at where the dune is and say 200 feet from there. The problem with Reach 4, where this is, where there's a ton of bushes, is that it keeps accreting.
Right?
It's got groins in that area, and it keeps getting sand that comes down from the wild dunes renourishments, and so it just keeps building and building and building. And if you just keep building, and you don't have any waves that ever come on there, it's probably going to keep growing bushes. You can't touch the bushes according to South Carolina law, because that's their jurisdiction.
Right.
So I don't know what you do if you continue to keep accreting here.
Right.
I don't think we have
I don't think
money
it sticks
for-
out that much, to be honest with you, and in the shoal.
It's
I-
like
well,
400 it's like 400 feet or something from the BCM line.
Okay, whatever.
I know.
Okay.
But
I'd throw you
Douglas,
some
that-
sand for sure, but.
Let's don't get,
in the definition that Wendy has put forward to this committee, that reach 4 wouldn't be touched in this renourishment or any future renourishment.
True, correct. Because it's accretional. Yep.
Okay,
I,
Do you want to go?
I think we should move forward what John wrote up nicely. It's a very nice introduction to the definition of a healthy beach that comes next that we want to also pass in this committee.
But
So-
I have one thing, going back, I mean, the definition of the healthy beach and the trigger lines are strongly related, because again, you can redefine where that healthy beach line gets defined, but going back is part of our problem in the past, that we hit triggers, and by the time we responded to the triggers, we got below where we really called a healthy beach. So the two being related, and again, is the problem, the currently defined line, or are the triggers that we
Yeah.
used need to be pushed further out so that we actually start the process before we get,
So
Erosional.
in June of 2023, I think it was June, summer of 2023, I wrote an email to town council saying there is 0 dry sand at a high tide. This is a trigger, got to be a trigger, right? If people don't have a place to sit and walk, this has to be a trigger for a renourishment. Let's get the permit in. The permit went in 2 years later, right?
right.
So why is that? I'm not exactly sure. I do think that if you change the definition into, and Stephen and I worked on this yesterday, and it's not hard for him to take all of his data, because he's got all the data, he's got
Yeah,
all the
it-
areas. He can handle this
It's just moving a reference.
quickly. He can handle all this with his magic. And basically put it in terms where if you go out to the beach and you look, you can say, I'm at a trigger, because I can see, I know where the baseline is, because it's kind of where the dunes are, right? And you can see where the wet line is. And you don't have to have this argument of, well, there's all this cubic yards of sand that's out 600 feet in the ocean, which is cool, and I'm glad it's there, but you still have a 5.8 tide coming up to the homes. So we can't keep having this conversation of, you're a healthy beach, and then the residents are saying, but it's not a healthy beach, it's coming up, to my pool. So I think if we change it, and it's not a hard change he's got all the calculations, the cubic yards are still there behind the scenes, but you put it in words that people understand and that you can monitor on a day-to-day basis. So that's part of it, is just putting it in human language, so that when you go out, you're like, okay, I get it. So I don't think that's that huge change. The other change is that we're taking it from a structure line to the South Carolina baseline for the majority of Isle Palms. And so you do see that there is a deficit, greater deficit in reaches 1 and 2 than the structure line. So
So-
that is a change.
But I guess my thing is the baseline changes. So, and again, nobody knows where the baseline is when you walk down the beach.
Right.
The structures are easy to see, I'm this far from a structure. Where the baseline,
But people
if it's a
can't
that
dune-
make
goes,
if it's a
that goes
dune-
against what
dune
you
or
just said
something,
of
there's-
people being able to see it.
No, the
There's
dunes are
dunes
clear.
Yeah,
about
yeah.
Okay, but
these
it-
things.
the-
You
That's
have
the
them.
start,
If they're
yeah.
not there, then you know.
But the
But the dunes.
dunes are not the baseline.
The dunes are not the baseline. So if you want to establish where the dunes currently are, I understand that fully.
We're not doing that, because we can't afford to continue to add sand where we're accreting. We're talking about on the ends of the island where it's most critical, where you're gonna trigger renourishments. On the north end and Wild Dunes, it's basically a structure, because you got homes on the wrong side of the BCM line. So that's easy to see. And on the south end, it's basically, the dune is kind of where the BCM line is. So we're saying, fix it at the 2018 line, that's the line we're gonna use. And we're not gonna change that line, that's the line that we're gonna measure for, that's our beach line from here until eternity, unless it doesn't make sense anymore.
So when,
That's the
when
line that we're gonna
BCM
measure.
changes it, we would
We'd stick
not
with
change, we'd go to the
2018.
2018
We're just
line?
sticking with the line, here's our beach line. It's the 2018 line, we all know it, we're trying to renourish with that line in
Okay,
mind anyway.
yeah.
So I don't think we're that far off from what we're doing with our renourishment, from where life is today. Third and fourth are accretional, and I know that you got tons and tons of bushes and sand beyond that. And then wild dunes, for a lot of the erosional hotspots, it's basically the structure line. And so you're just taking that visual that says, where is that wet line coming to? And I would recommend that we do it in, take that visual line twice a year in our biannual measuring. In the fall, after hurricane season, that was consistent with the second opinion recommendation that we got. So you can quickly have feedback to the system that says, okay, what happened after the hurricane season? Do we have erosion? We had a huge erosion in October of 2025 that didn't get captured in our survey because we're surveying in August. So that data doesn't come back to town council or the committee until it's almost too late. The other period that I would recommend taking that visual line would be in April, because it's 6 months away from after the hurricane season. And it's also in a decent high tide month. So you don't have to have the conversation of, oh, we just took a picture, but that was on a 4-foot tide. What's really gonna happen when it's a big tide and people come out for spring break and they wanna sit on the beach? So the recommendation that we can put in here is that we do it in November and April is when you would take those snapshots in time.
And then Foth Olson, I'm not sure, I haven't talked to Steve about this though, but they manage Hilton Head. And they've mentioned that they have a much more aggressive timing approach on the trigger, managing the trigger points than acting on it. It's part of their, standard procedures. They've got, and I'm sorry, I don't know exactly what they are, but they've noted that that's important.
That, I do think that we have to say that a big difference between the town of Hilton Head and the city of Isle of Palms is their longstanding funding mechanism that is somewhere, I think, in the neighborhood of $30 million every year going, well, it wasn't that amount back in the 80s, but they have had additional streams of revenue,
Right.
and they're massive
I
compared
understand
to
that,
ours.
right. They
So
have
that
a
has
tourist
given them,
tax, too. They get.
that has given them a luxury that we don't currently
Okay.
have. I mean, they have an enormous fund and a revenue stream that we just don't have and we can't get to without a change to the state law, which we've advocated for, but it's a
I understand.
it's a big difference.
Do we
No, I
have
understand.
any kind, I thought we had some kind of fund.
We do have a fund. It grows, it typically, kind of historically has grown $800,000 a year.
And that's from what?
And that is an
source?
additional percent of taxing
Tax.
on accommodation. So if you
Okay.
stay here overnight, you pay an additional percent. It goes into a restricted fund, and that fund, for us, grows less than $1 million. We could get the math, we can get the number from the town of Hilton Head. I've heard that it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 million, so it's,
Yeah. And I
It's a
think
big
they have
difference.
some grandfathered
Laws.
tax or
Yes.
something.
yes, they have two different taxes that they enacted, and then the state legislature took away the ability for
Yeah.
other cities to do that. So
Right.
they have,
Right. And they're bigger.
and they have
Economy.
a
Okay,
bigger
I'm
economy.
concerned that this conversation is now moving on for quite some time now. I'm interested in moving the recommendation of the Healthy Beach forward together with the introduction that John wrote up.
I make a motion
What else
to
do,
approve the recommendation of the Healthy Beach.
second?
So I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Passed.
And that includes this document too?
Yep.
Okay.
You okay with that, Dietmar?
Yes, it's a nice introductory document. I think the two go well together.
Okay.
And well written, John.
Thank you.
Dietmar, you asked me to put together some numbers of how it would inform for the renourishment coming up. Do you want to handle that today? Still talking about the healthy beach definition change. I sent you the slides.
I don't know. Do we need to talk about that today?
Question. If we talk about this next month, do we still have time to inform town council of how much volume and where we put volumes and those types of things? Or do you need that now?
I'm not following the question. Do you have
When
time?
do we make a decision, when do we make a decision on if we're going to go with like the max permit bid? for
So
example?
council will make that decision April 28th.
So Douglas, if we as a committee came to the conclusion that we needed 200,000 yards of more sand than the maximum in the permit, that decision would have to be moved forward to council, or that recommendation would have to be moved forward before April 28th.
That's correct.
And I think that's where you're coming from, Wendy, right?
Yep. Why don't we try and tackle
I would
it?
say during construction, you would have the ability to make a change order request with the contractor and add additional sand as the project's progressing as well. So I don't know that it's a hard deadline, but council would still have to consider the amount. Miranex would have to be willing and to make that change, and so it could be done up till basically the time the dredge leaves at Miranex's discretion.
But
Why
you-
don't we spend
but you
5
also-
minutes teeing it up?
Yeah.
Let's get the conversation started,
Yep.
and then see where we land.
So
So
is
just,
this on the agenda?
it's minimum healthy beach.
Okay.
So if you take a look
This is
at,
quantifying it, Douglas, right? The first pages were to define what the policy and the triggers are, and now Wendy applied it to the current situation.
so if you go back to what Stephen did for us at our last meeting, he put the deficit, island volume deficits together for that baseline case versus the structure line case, which is the case we've been on in the past. So if you look at Wild Dunes, reaches 5 and 6, it's basically the exact same numbers of deficit. What you need?
Oh, you need the table there. Don't need to look at that table.
That was from our
Okay,
last,
just
Yeah, I didn't print it though. but
that was
that's
from our
okay.
last meeting.
Yeah, I remember it.
Well, you're gonna have to
That's all right.
look
It
off
was
of
a
this
great
little
table.
tiny thing. So he did 3 different cases for us. The management line was the one that went way out past all the bushes, and we said, okay, we don't have money for that. This is the baseline case that we asked him to run, and then this is the structure line, which is the old methodology. And if you look at the volume in reaches 5 and 6, which is Wild Dunes, you basically have the exact same deficit, 270 versus 276,000 cubic yards.
Yep.
In reaches 1 and 2, if you combine those, under the baseline methodology, it's 440,000 cubic yards versus under the prior methodology, it's 106,000 cubic yards. So most of that is because that volume was in backyards that aren't accessible to tourism, and it's not public beach. So, that's an incremental, whatever that is. What is the incremental to that? Anybody calculate that for me? 440 minus 106. So another 300,000 cubic yards. So if you put that into the case of what is the max renourishment, so that's this one here. And you start with Stevens 440 under the new definition. That's where that 440 comes from. The 270 is still the same deficit from Wild Dunes. That doesn't change. If you just go through the Wild Dunes calculation, everything would still be the same for them. I put in 150,000 per year for the erosion assumption. That, I believe, came from the ad hoc committee where it takes into account current erosion plus shoal coming on and that kind of thing. So that's 1.6 million cubic yards of advanced fill. So that takes you to, if you add those two together, 1.870 million cubic yards, which is the same as the permit max. If you go through the top line, reaches 1 and 2, which is the south end of Isle of Palms, you're starting with a higher deficit. Stephen had an erosion rate of 30,000 per year. I have a slide a couple slides back that shows the south end erosion and different erosion rates. So it's 30,000 per year if you look at the long-term erosion all the way back to 2010. It's 56,000 if you look since 2018. 70,000 per year was the permit assumption by CSC that went into the case. 89,000 per year is a 5-year erosion rate, and 136,000 per year is the highest erosion period recently. So if you just take into account a 5-year erosion rate, that gets you to an advanced fill of 712,000. The total of those two would be 1.15 million cubic yards. Your permit max is 800,000, so that's over it. So I think that the biggest driver is that advanced fill assumption. What's the erosion rate that you want to assume on the south end? So I just put in the comments, if you just do the 800,000, the permit max, and then what's the worst case scenario if you erode similar to the recent erosion rate, then that's going to last you 5.5 years.
Okay.
Okay, so.
So you see where that leads to, Douglas, right? It leads to that some of us on the beach committee believe that we are not applying enough sand on the south end of the island.
So I will just say, I am dealing with this every day, the meetings every day, the bids every day. I have no idea where this came from, what math she just used. It's not on the agenda. I don't know that there's anybody in the public that could have possibly followed what was just said. I didn't follow it. I would say this is a discussion that hasn't been properly notified in accordance with FOIA. I don't know if this comes to if you are working yourselves to a recommendation that hasn't been noticed. I don't know, not tracking exactly
So what we're
what's
trying to
going on.
do is approve a healthy beach definition and then say, if we use that definition, what does it mean for us? One of the things that I asked Stephen in an email to do for us is to calculate the south end erosion. And I didn't get it back, so I did it myself, but it would be nice if Stephen could put together for reaches 1 and 2, what do the bars of total cubic yards look like? And what are the different erosion rates based on different ways to look at it? So we did that for Wild Dunes. We did not do that for South End. We just took a look at a historical average. And my concern is, based on what happened to Breach Inlet, is that the history doesn't necessarily reflect what's going on currently. So it's been coming up in every single meeting we've had so far. And it may be the time to address it if we've got a chance to apply this healthy beach definition and actual erosion rates into what we're doing. It could inform it.
But let's ask Stephen. That's why one of the reasons he's sitting here. Stephen, you obviously were involved in putting all of these numbers together. You're very familiar with the erosion rate, and you're very familiar with the deficit. The deficit calculation that Cindy just showed in the medium scenario comes from you, nobody else. And we use that in the calculation of what's needed in the south end as a deficit plus the erosion rate. The difference in the erosion rate assumption is obviously that none of us on the committee believes you should go back to 2009, when the erosion at the south end last year was over 100,000 yards. Right, so what we put into the healthy beach definition that we just moved forward to City Council was that we're taking the last 5 years into the equation. And the last 5 years number is a number that Cindy just has in this calculation. So if you applied the 400,000 of deficit plus a erosion rate over the next 8 years that is equivalent to the erosion rate that we factually had in the last 5 years, that's when you're arriving at the amount of sand that we need in the south end. Stephen, what's wrong with that calculation?
I don't think there's anything wrong with that calculation, other than
Thank you.
just understanding all the different ways that the same thing could be calculated. The deficit volume was calculated based off of the 200-foot dry sand beach width seaward of the setback line. It's important to probably point out that in a lot of areas, that condition is a healthier condition that's ever been at that area. So we're pushing the shoreline out seaward, which isn't a bad thing at all. It's just you're having to account for you're advancing the shoreline seaward in your minimum condition and then adding additional sand on top of that to account for future erosion.
I'm not sure that's true when we were
Yeah,
you got us all fired up for Google
Yeah,
Earth
I have
now.
something for you after the meeting about with the
so we
beach
did
at
go
the
back.
south end of the island, the tip. It's
Yeah.
been enormous at times.
The-
We did go back and look at it,
Yeah.
but you could say, okay, so let's say 200's too big for if you want to do that and you want to say 150. 150 is completely a decent number.
Yeah,
If you want
that's-
to mimic it off of the past. I think the key is that it's different than the structure line.
It's mildly different on the south end from the structure line. It's not too, in some cases, it's maybe 100 feet from the structure line. In most cases, it's relatively close, within
Yeah.
40, 50 feet
Yeah.
or so. And either one of those is fine to use. Regarding the erosion rates, the last real bad year we had of erosion was between August 23 and September 24, when reaches 1 and 2 lost a total of 76,000 yards.
We do not have the data on what was lost
The
in
data's in all the
October.
monitoring reports.
But
that
we don't have the data from 2025 on what we lost because it's captured as a loss, but then we also had an Army Corps renourishment on top of it. So you don't really have a clear picture
Well, we
of
look
what
at-
the erosion was before you started renourishing.
The nourishment didn't occur till early in 2025. I don't think there was a lot of sand that was placed prior to our February survey, and I don't have that exact number, and we'd have to figure out from the Corps, but Ottawa was moving incredibly slow, placing 1,000 yards a day when they were working. So there wasn't a lot. We visually saw, just from a reaction of the efforts we were having to put in for sandbag maintenance and all that, that the beach was not in the same condition it was in 23 or 24. If it had been in that condition, it doesn't really matter what the Corps would have done, we would still be dealing with active water, knocking down sandbags on top of houses. Again, we can use as conservative of a number as you want to use for the erosion rate on the south end. What that does, it just changes your volume calculations and your long-term management cost
Yep.
when you're trying to plan for it. For this particular project, we would be, I'm happy to encourage the consideration of additional sand just for the sake of it's a good price and it is not going to hurt anything at the south end. It buys you more time, a better beach condition. It's a buffer for storms. There's a lot of reasons to do that regardless of what a minimum healthy beach erosion rate is. It's just for the sake of the actual project and where we're at and the cost that we have and the budget that was kind of considered, it makes sense to do that. As well as the north end. What that amount is a financial decision at that point. We'd like to see as much as we can. I think, adding another 200 or, a little more than that at the south end is a good value. And we can make that recommendation and will make that recommendation just on that face of it. So I don't know that for this particular effort that we need to, it's great to have the supporting information, and it's as simple as saying, if the beach erodes 50,000 yards per year, you bought yourself another 4 years. If it erodes 100,000, you bought yourself 2 more years at a pretty good cost.
Right.
Especially when you consider the cost to deal with the emergency rates.
Right.
So do you want to have this? Do you want to delay the conversation for a couple weeks and we'll have another meeting?
So is the group thinking of making a recommendation to change the quantity of sand that is placed? Because if so, that's not on the agenda, it's not been noticed, it hasn't been publicized. Nobody in the public would know that that was being discussed today.
It's true.
So yes, you would need, it would not be a legal, it wouldn't be a legal discussion in accordance with our Freedom of Information Act. So it doesn't have to be 2 weeks, it could be 24 hours.
Okay.
I mean, it can be quick, but it has to be on the agenda,
Yep.
publicized,
Yep.
noticed.
All right, so that means we need a meeting between now and the next meeting. to handle that.
Okay.
Do we want to look at schedules? We have one more item on the agenda today.
If it's
Yeah, that's a
sooner,
quick one.
better for me. I think I'm gonna go out of town
Same, yeah.
mid-month.
And we couldn't do that in our May meeting because somehow you feel that if there was 200,000 more yards of sand, it would have to be covered already in the council 28th meeting, April 28th meeting.
Would not have to be. I mean, that is when, it just so happens that council is approving a first draft of a budget, they're approving the contractor, it would be, but I guess to Stephen's point, it could be really any time. Council could make that determination anytime. I guess that gives you enough time to get the permit modified, so that would be a month or two.
Probably a month.
So it sounds like you would need to back up, well, you don't know. And are we talking about only adding additional sand on the south end?
No, I think what we should be thinking about is adding additional sand to
both
meet
ends?
try to achieve the minimum healthy beach.
Well,
objective.
it would in Wild Dunes, if you like their erosion
Well,
rate.
Wendy,
it
I see
does.
these, but I think we need to.
Revisit it?
Yeah, revisit it, yeah.
Okay, well, if we adopt the current minimum healthy beach definition that we have, then what you would find is that reaches 3 and 4 will not get sand, and that the Wild Dunes 2 reaches combined are basically the exact same spot as where they were before at that 270. So there would be no change in the
Well, I'd
baseline
like to-
deficit
I'd
for
like
Wild
to
Dunes.
understand it a little
But-
better, please.
Back to yours, going through, so April council meeting, it's.
April
We're-
28th,
We're
there
gonna
would
go
be,
through with the, award of the contract,
correct.
but from what you're both are saying, we could come in May, and so that would be the end of May would be the next council meeting to do a contract mod, could be approved at that council meeting. Is that,
Yes. But does that give you time
so that
to
would be
get
late May, because they give you time
before,
to get a
because
permit.
you'd have to do it before
Yeah,
they
I mean,
move.
At the
from
direction of
north end.
council, we can submit a permit modification now in anticipation of the possibility of increasing well, let me rephrase that. We don't have the permit yet. Once we have the permit, and I would not want to request a change now because the permit is pending.
Right.
But once we have the permit, then we request the mod, even if we don't use it, that's okay.
So how long, because they're gonna only be at the north end, when will they move in your mind?
The
and be
north end will
off the
probably
north end?
take 2 to 3 months to do that in 2.5 months, maybe. So we would need to let Marinex know prior to them moving from one site to the other.
So really, we'd need to have the permit in place, the contract modification in place before they move, probably in
August or September.
Oh,
Right.
I was thinking July.
The sooner the better, for sure.
So are we back to the beginning of May is okay for us?
Yes, I think so.
That's what I was trying to get to was, yeah, I think May, and the council could look at it May. to
It gives us also a little bit of time, Wendy, to vet it with council,
And,
so it receives a warmer welcome.
Yeah.
well, we're going to tee it up in a recommendation to council in our recommendation for award that they consider, additional sand placement. And then-
Okay, good. That makes then 2 of us potentially, that's even better.
I don't,
Okay.
well, do you think, though, if they make an approval in the next meeting, that they'll be reluctant to make another change that involves more expense afterwards? Or do you think they'll kind of settle everything at the first go and not
good
be
point.
open to spending more money? Because they would have told the town that here's how much the project's going to cost.
Yeah.
I can only give my personal, is I'm looking at is, yeah, we want to lock down the contract while we have it.
Yeah.
And again, kind of get that set in stone, so come back afterwards to do a mod. We do contract
Yeah.
mods all the time. So I don't view it that way, but it does give us more time to dig into the cost, how much, where we can get the money from. So I think that becomes more of the issue of,
So, well, suppose the initial contract, though, comes in like below the amount of money that we've budgeted, which it might.
well,
We know
It is,
that, we
yeah.
know
It
the
is.
number.
we already know
Well,
that.
But it was some additional sand, though. So we're gonna say, here's the contract, we're gonna add, I'm gonna make up a number, 200 yards, 1,000 yards of sand, so it's gonna be $23 million, okay? I'm making it up. So, and then we do some more analysis on what we want for dry sand beach, and we come back and say, oh, well, actually, we want to spend an additional 2 or 3 million on top of that to achieve our objectives. Is that something that you think the council's gonna, because they've already said, agreed on $23 million. Are you gonna wanna come back and say, oh, whoops, not whoops, but we wanted to make it better, let's do 27 or?
I mean, it really comes more, I think more of the issue from, again, probably some of council anyway, is the funding side of it. It's
Right.
not,
Right.
I think we're all in agreement, we want to do as much as we can. The question really becomes, how much money do we actually have that we can spend towards this? And
Yep.
we don't really, we're over what, I guess, when you say budget, we've always not had enough to kind
Yeah.
of fund, that money was never put aside, so that becomes, the real question becomes more of how's the funding, not whether we want to do it.
So my recommendation is that we do present this information to town council to say, that it is bumping up a little bit of the deficit, and then we're questioning the erosion rate. So at least you have the conversation to say,
Yeah.
you know what, if we do only the 800,000 at the south end, you gotta know that it might only get you 5 years. And, do you need to, get a groin in like immediately or something? So it's a conversation that frames up the financials, the cost benefits, what do we think is in the works? What's the probability that we're gonna even get at a groin and get it approved? So all of it is just information to inform, and I do think it needs to go to town council. So I think what we need to do is decide, is the May date okay, or do we need an interim date in April to get there?
I think, Wendy, the May date is fine for us to bring it back on the agenda and make a final decision as a committee. But I agree with you that the information that we have gathered so far in terms of what the deficit calculation means and what the erosion rate does, based on the healthy beach profile that we just moved forward, that information should go to council now, so that they have it.
Okay, can we?
But let's not make the decision now, because Douglas is already concerned that we didn't have it on the agenda.
Right. So let's address it in May. Can we include the Stevens Island deficit volume chart? Because I don't think that, was that ever handed out to anybody? I was not in the meeting last time, so I don't know if that was ever.
No, he did it for us. I don't know that council saw that.
Yeah, and I would be hesitant to just present that to council without kind of the full context of what that number represents, and that it's kind of a working document. I don't think it was ever intended to be, this is a final recommendation or anything. It was
It got baked into a final recommendation today.
okay, well, that's fine if y'all want to do that.
We loved it so much, Stephen. Okay. So let's work towards nailing that conversation. Next month, we're gonna get the new beach management recommendation to town council. We have one more item on the agenda, and this one's gonna be an easy one, I believe, which is to take a look at a recommendation for the nourishment contractor.
All right.
Yep.
And it's in our,
It's already written up, is in everybody's documents that were sent out.
Yep.
is there any changes to the document that went out by DBAR?
No, I think
Marinette's
Marinex
instruction.
Yeah.
Marinex is the right contractor to choose. I think they are a very reputable company. They are local. We saw them in action in Hilton Head. Stephen has worked with them before, and they came in with the lowest bids. So I think all lights are green, and I think we should approve Marinex as or we should recommend to council that council seriously considers approving Marinex as a contractor.
I make a motion
I
to
agree.
approve the recommendation for Marinix.
A second.
Agree.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right.
Dietmar, do you wanna forward that to council, or you want me to? Either way is fine.
I'd like you to.
Okay, will do.
Okay, so next meeting is May 7th. I believe we also have FOTH coming in.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That is correct.
So we have FOTH, and we have this healthy beach definition feeding into our renourishment plans. Is there anything else that should be on the agenda that we want to talk about now?
It's probably enough.
Maybe start talking about finances. Start the ball. I can help work on that, but,
It's going to be a nice, meaty,
well, just to
healthy
start.
meeting. Okay,
Well,
let's
if we
put
want-
it on there and hopefully we get
Yeah,
to it then.
yeah. I mean, I was
That's
gonna
got to
say,
be a
add it to the
minimum of a
agenda,
2-hour
so-
meeting, wouldn't you think? Okay, anything else that needs to be discussed today that I missed?
So how is this, you asked if DBAR was going to send something to town council. So we have are all of these going to be sent to town council, including?
So we passed
the-
Yeah,
the
two
recommendation of the Healthy
recommendations
Beach.
And then
coming
this-
out of this meeting.
In this thing?
And I think
here.
that's part of the first recommendation.
Yep.
And you
Yeah.
do that?
I'll package
Okay,
that
sorry
together and
for
send
my
it, yep.
ignorance, so,
Yep.
okay,
And then we have the Merrick selection recommendation.
right.
So those will be the two. We also passed our focus for 2026, but I don't know.
It needs to-
That's for information to council only. That's not a recommendation to them.
That's a FYI. document. I think that's it, folks.
Yeah.
Need a motion to adjourn? Who made the motion to adjourn?
Yeah. Did you make a motion?
I didn't make a motion. I make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Right.
Aye.
Record at 10 to
Aye.
12.
Adjourn. Thank you,
So
guys.
Dietmar, when are you coming
Thank you
back?
very much. I'm gonna be another 10 days over here.
Nice.